According to officials with the Sipsey Valley Volunteer Fire Department, the fire broke out around 5 o'clock this afternoon. Witnesses told us a man and woman were inside. WVUA talked with a Good Samaritan who called 911. She told us the couple didn't even know the fire had started.
I ran up in the door and I let their dogs out when I got to the porch. I mean, I really believe if we hadn't stopped, they wasn't coming out.
I was trying to walk out good. It got shot, it fell on me, and then I just called 911 and walked out.
Ashton Brown describes how he got blood on his shirt following a high school graduation party at the Lynx apartment complex in Tuscaloosa. Brown says the alleged shooter got into a fight, went and got a gun, then turned out the lights and started shooting in the dark.
Our state's highest court issued an order that the state resecure this facility.
Once the troopers were disbanded to a post at every single door at Green Track, Murphy says the employees and city and state officials were given the opportunity to leave, but they refused and instead actually requested to be arrested.
Colonel Murphy came in. We told him we were willing to obey the law and that we were willing to allow them to do their jobs, but that we were going to have to go to jail, and that's where we drew the line in the sand.
2 people died in a plane crash at the Tuscaloosa Regional Airport tonight. Captain Lloyd Baker with the Tuscaloosa Metro Homicide Unit says the single-engine plane was coming from the north and crashed before it hit the runway. He says there was only a distress call around 7:29 p.m. right before the plane crashed.
So we're going to take an aerial look at the Alabama coast. As the chopper cranks up, no one on board knows exactly what we'll find. In fact, our pilot has done about 30 of these flyovers, and he's learned to expect change.
A lot of difference that a day makes. Not necessarily excited about the circumstances, but we do enjoy what we're doing. And we want to get this job right for the local area, and most of us are local guys.
On board today, Coast Guard aerial observer Jason Bodell.
Today there's been nothing.
Whether you're on one of these cleanup boats below or part of Incident Command, you are depending on Bodell's trained eyes. For the first time in weeks, he sees no problems.
This is what firefighters told us they saw when they arrived at the scene, the smoky, smoldering remains of a burned trailer. Firefighters told us a family member who lives nearby saw the lawn on fire but didn't realize the trailer had burned. They called 911, and by the time firefighters arrived, it was already too late.
A big loss, but some of the fire members, they're here, they're staying with me, and our pastor's here, and I'm going up now to talk with my wife and the rest of the family. We're just trying to get together, and right now just settle down a little bit and see what we can do next.
But what can you do for someone who's just lost so much?
Well, I just told him I loved him and I'm sorry. And, you know, when a circumstance like this, you don't ever know.
Simmons told us what happens next is in God's hands.
That's up to God. That's up to God. Whatever he wants me to do in dealing with this, I'll do it. I have no problem with that.
Marcia Beard is survived by her mother, father, husband, and 2 daughters who are only just beginning to move on. In Duncanville, Danny Salter, WVUA News.
In 2010, Tuscaloosa Rotary Honor Flight has flown 187 veterans to Washington, D.C. For one day, they get a true hero's reception. Along with the veterans are guardians, sons, daughters, grandchildren, and volunteers there to care for the veterans. And some of the guardians are there to honor someone who never made it home. Guardians like Bura Hollingsworth.
Remember, just like it was yesterday, our oldest brother, A.J. Hollingsworth, came home on furlough. He was in his full dress. This was his last trip home before he was shipped overseas and finally killed.
Bura Hollingsworth was just a child when he lost his older brother A.J. in World War II, but the memories are still clear.
The first time I ever saw my dad cry, and he said he's gone. But each time that the telegram was read, said something to the effect that we regret to inform you that PFC A.J. Hollingsworth, ASN 34946301, was killed in action while fighting for his country in Philipsburg, France on January the 4th, 1945. And the only thing else it said was he was killed by machine gun fire.
Live from the campus of the University of Alabama, it's WVUA TV's live coverage, the 2010 Homecoming Parade, brought to you in part by 2 Men and a Truck, movers who care.
We're bringing you live coverage here on WVUA all throughout the day. Lynn Brooks today, joined by First Lady of Alabama football, Ms. Terry Saban. And we're so glad you could join us again this year.
Well, thank you, Lynn. It's an honor to be a part of this, and I appreciate you having me back.
The parade just left downtown Tuscaloosa just a few moments ago. So people out there lining up, just waiting for it to roll through this area.
And that's what homecoming is all about, Lynn, is coming home. And I think you see people of all ages, all religions, all nationalities, all shapes and sizes. They're all coming home to be a part of the homecoming parade and events.
And speaking of those events, WVUA has been out and about all week long here at the Capstone so that we can bring you all the images from homecoming. A lot of great things that happened during the homecoming festivities. One of our personal favorites is the pep rally. Our crews were out there last night and check out the crowd at the pep rally. Just coming out giving us a big roll tide. You got the cheerleaders, the dance line, and of course Big Al. You love Big Al, don't you, Terry?
I love Big Al. I think my children were at that pep rally. There's Greg, there's our team, and I think you'll see my husband there shortly.
Oh, here he comes.
Yeah, he spoke, and there was a bonfire, and just a great way to kick off this homecoming weekend and homecoming game. There's the bonfire.
Oh, the bonfire is a tradition here at the Capstone. A lot of people like to come out and just really get you in the spirit of homecoming. Usually kicks off right after the pep rally so that you can get all fired up, and then you can literally get fired up. You can watch the bonfire.
I think after the bonfire, Nick and the team went to a movie, and again, that's part of a tradition when you have a late game the following day, which of course this is rather late. The whole team goes to a movie, kind of a bonding thing.
Gary Harris has a wrap-up of the big game between Bama and Texas from inside the Rose Bowl.
Alabama players wanted to give Nick Saban a Gatorade shower at the SEC championship game, but junior All-American linebacker Orlando McClain would not let them do it, saying we've got unfinished business. Well, on Thursday night in Pasadena, California, Nick Saban got a Gatorade shower when Alabama clinched its 13th national championship, but its first since 1992. 37-21 over the Texas Longhorns, and guess what? Even Nick Saban wasn't too upset about getting wet.
Well, I wish they'd do the water, you know. The Gatorade's awful sticky. I'm a lot happier with the bath than I would have been if I didn't get one, I can tell you that.
Right in the middle of Woods Quad, you'll find a gigantic, hard...
A cucumber? I don't know, kind of looks like a butternut squash to me.
I just kind of think it looks like a bowling pin.
When I first saw it, I thought it was like a capsule that we sent man to the moon in on the old Saturn rockets.
A peanut, but I think that's one of the neat things about abstract art is that you can look at it and you can take from it what you will.
This is Argyle. It's a three-dimensional industrial piece. Argyle is approximately 10 feet tall. It weighs about 500 pounds, and it's made up of 1,500 aluminum tiles that have been welded together. Now, the tiles aren't flat, they're curved, and that gives the entire piece a sort of flow and twist that makes something very hard, like metal, appear soft.
There was by no means any intention whatsoever of putting anything that was going to offend or be controversial out there. It's simply a piece of sculpture.
Nick Saban always talks about overcoming adversity during a game, during a season, during a practice, and certainly Alabama had to do that on Thursday night against Texas. The Longhorns lost their star quarterback, Colt McCoy, on the 5th play of the game, but they fought back in the second half. Down 24-6 at the break, they made it 24-21 and had a chance to win when the Alabama defense stepped up and made the plays to secure the victory. Following the game, Coach Saban said that he's never been prouder of a football team.
I'll tell you what I told the team, that I've never been prouder of a group of guys for their resiliency, their buy-in, their hard work, and coaching staff for the great job that they did.
Let's show you some action from the game on Thursday night.
Watching Alabama's WVUA News at 6.
Some Northport merchants are upset about a possible hotel that's being planned for the downtown Northport area. We'll hear from business owners about those plans. And you're looking live at the city of Tuscaloosa from the WVUA Tower Cam. Alabama's home team forecast is straight ahead. Good evening, I'm Philip Coleman.
And I'm Lynn Brooks. Well, the game is over and the Tide is victorious again.
But with the end of the homecoming weekend comes the cleanup that goes along with such a busy weekend in Tuscaloosa. Today, the remains of the long weekend came down on the University of Alabama campus. The homecoming weekend brought in tens of thousands of people to the Tuscaloosa area. The weekend culminated in the big game against the Ole Miss Rebels. And during that game, Alabama outplayed the Rebels and came up victorious 23-10, making the Tide's record 6-1, and we'll have more on that during Alabama's home team sports. Meanwhile, WVUA was at Coach Nick Saban's news conference today, where we asked the coach about his wife being on WVUA for the homecoming parade broadcast.
No. I hope you're not trying to get me in trouble. I don't know if she had the expectation that I was supposed to be watching or not, but I wasn't. I didn't. But I heard about it.
And of course, your home team had complete live coverage of the homecoming parade on Saturday. But don't worry if you missed it. You can check out our website, WVUATV.com, and see the complete parade broadcast when celebrity co-host Mrs. Terry Saban joined WVUA's Lynn Brooks. Just click on News, and there you'll find a selection of everything homecoming.
And just for the record, she did a great job, in case Coach Saban did get to see that. Well, the city of Northport is tangled in a controversy over a proposed hotel on Main Avenue. Business owners of downtown Northport are divided over the plan for a Hampton Inn on the riverfront because of disputes over the hotel's appearance and available parking. Northport City Administrator Scott Collins points out that the city has little input on the final decision since the hotel is not scheduled to be built on city land. He reminds business people that this debate is more than a symbol of division. He says the discussion over how to squeeze in the hotel is a sign of good times for the city. After all, even the business owners that aren't happy with the current plan are working to find some alternatives.
We're down to how do you make it fit. That's a pretty easy question that communities all across this country would love to be faced with answering today. How do we manage our growth instead of how do we manage our decline?
A lot of these things could be worked out. They created the crisis by allowing this to happen for a year and throwing a plan out and saying, now, either take the plan or you're going to be the one that kills the hotel.
And if you couldn't make the meeting tonight for the downtown merchants, there's a meeting tomorrow night for the city of Northport to discuss the plans for the hotel on that riverfront property. That's scheduled for 6 p.m. tomorrow night at the Public Safety Building. That's right behind Pizza Hut on McFarland Boulevard. Mayor Bobby Herndon says that's where the city will take comments and hear your concerns about the new hotel.
Details surrounding a pedestrian hit in Tuscaloosa are starting to surface, including what the suspect could be charged with. It happened early Saturday morning at the intersection of University Boulevard and 4th Avenue near the east side of the U of A campus. The Tuscaloosa Metro Homicide Unit says a car hit a 35-year-old man from South Haven, Mississippi. The man was crossing 4th Avenue with a group of friends when the car struck him. The homicide unit says the car left the scene, but investigators successfully tracked it down. The homicide unit says the driver could face felony charges for leaving the scene of an accident with injuries.
The suspect vehicle struck the pedestrian. A piece of that car was left behind. The investigator was actually able to determine what type of car it was by that piece of evidence off the vehicle. He did a search for that brand of car in the area and actually located the suspect at his residence.
And the driver is in custody pending charges of leaving the scene of an accident with injuries. The victim remains in critical condition.
The election is just 15 days away and the races are starting to heat up. But one issue that's getting little mention this year, large jury verdicts that were once a hot issue here in Alabama. Dr. Robert Bentley, the gubernatorial Republican nominee, has asked for limits on medical malpractice suits, but hasn't made it a major issue in his campaigning. Democratic nominee Ron Sparks has not mentioned liability lawsuits in any of his speeches. Tom Darthy, chairman of the Alabama Civil Justice Reform Committee, says the lawsuits haven't been an issue because businesses feel the Alabama Supreme Court will, quote, straighten out any wrong that occurs at a lower court, end quote. And the two men up for governor will take the stage at Auburn University tomorrow night at 7. Bentley and Sparks will be debating some of the hot topics that are facing the state before the November 2nd election. This is the second debate put on by the League of Women Voters, along with the student government associations at both the University of Alabama and Auburn University. The debate will be broadcast live on both Alabama Public Television and Alabama Public Radio. And of course, Alabama's home team will have complete coverage of the big elections November 2nd. We'll have the latest information on WVUA News at 4, 5, 6, and 10. We will also have live cut-ins throughout the evening, and we'll bring you the latest numbers running across the top of your television screen all that evening. Be sure to make WVUA the place you turn for all your election coverage.
Researchers at Auburn University are investigating whether shellfish farms could help improve Alabama's coastal economy. The university's shellfish lab on Dauphin Island near Mobile is working with volunteers and conducting experiments to see if oyster farms used along other coasts could survive in Alabama. At one oyster farm in Louisiana, rows of oysters are suspended in water and placed in cages to protect them from predators. They can also be removed from the water and exposed to sunlight to kill off seaweed. And a pair of free beach concerts drew more than 65,000 people to the Alabama coast to make up for some of that lost revenue from the BP oil spill last summer. Country singer Brad Paisley performed on Sunday to a crowd of around 30,000, and Bon Jovi drew in a crowd of about 35,000. The concerts are meant to bring in business during a normally slow time of year, the fall, and most of the tickets were given away with vacation property rentals. But if you miss those concerts, there is still a chance for you to catch one of those free performances. Country singer Alan Jackson will take the stage at Orange Beach at the Wharf Amphitheater in October the 30th. That concert will kick off at 7:30 p.m.
The ruling for Democratic Senator Quentin Ross Jr. of Montgomery, one of the 11 people indicted on charges in the latest bingo probe, will happen tomorrow. The ruling, scheduled for today, was postponed by Judge Terry Moore. You're looking at video from last week's arraignments. Senator Ross is pleading that the restrictions put on him because of the indictments is prohibiting him from preparing his defense or doing his public duties. Prosecutors in the case say they have no objections to Ross talking to potential witnesses as long as there's an attorney present. Attorneys for several other defendants attended and said if Ross is successful, they plan to make the same request. Coming up for you here on WVUA News at 6, some students took some time out of their studies to play around, but it was all for a good cause. We've got the details in today's Capstone Correspondent Report.
And one thing about dry, clear weather in West Alabama, you get beautiful sunset shots. And another one this afternoon as we look off to the west from our tower cam. We'll talk about the weather for the next 7 days for West Alabama when we come back.